It's easy to mock the hard-living, spandex-clad bands of the 80s scene. But was there more to them than hairspray and bad behavior? In the summer of 1993, members of the American hair metal band Winger answered a knock on the door of their tour bus from a young fan bearing a videocassette of a new cartoon series about a pair of unsupervised, delinquent young rock fans. Beavis and Butt-Head, it was called. "You really need to see this," their visitor told them. As the group gathered in front of the TV set in their ride's front lounge, to their horror, they discovered that the increasingly popular MTV show, then in its first full-length season, featured a wimp of a character, called Stuart, who wore a Winger shirt in every scene in which he appeared. As well as wetting the bed and contracting diarrhea, the short and tubby little boy was consistently derided by titular leads who wore clothing bearing the names AC/DC and Metallica. There were no prizes for guessing what the writers and animators thought of Stewart's favorite band. The effects of this less than resounding endorsement were felt immediately. People just stopped coming to our shows that week, and we cancelled the tour a few weeks later, recalls Winger guitarist Reb Beach in the three-part documentary series Nothin' But a Good Time, the uncensored story of 80s hair metal, which premiered recently on Paramount+. Television. They made us and they broke us. It delights me to report that this story is just one of Nothin' But a Good Time's many lip-smacking calamities. With its emphasis on West Hollywood and, particularly, the Sunset Strip, over the course of 3 episodes, the viewer is afforded an unsparing view of the rapid rise and fall of a movement defined by its remarkable absurdity. Although most metal-adjacent bands of the time had long hair, the term, hair metal, refers to the ones whose faces were plastered with slap and whose bonnets were tousled with hairspray. So much hairspray, in fact, that the series is only ever a stray cigarette away from becoming a musical production of the towering inferno. Depending on your position on either side of the cultural divide, this 21st century account is either a trio of horror films or else a much-needed corrective on behalf of a subgenre that has yet to receive its critical due. Certainly, it tends to be forgotten that in the 1980s the Donnybrook between real and false metal was nothing less than a sonic and aesthetic civil war. The enmity between people enamored of noisy groups who looked as if they'd emerged from a plane crash and those who preferred catchy fare made by musicians who resembled pantomime dames was viscerally real. Me, I'm just about old enough to have despised this stuff the first time around. What's more, today, my noisy teenage insistence that the invading army of spandex-clad dudes amounted to a feeble foe feels vindicated now that I know that one of the movement's more popular groups, in the US, Winger somehow scored 2 platinum albums, was sunk by a cartoon. See, it's rubbish. Certainly, there is no way the creators of Beavis and Butt-Head would have dressed Stuart in a Slayer shirt. And yet, from the moment Paramount announced Nothin' But a Good Time's place on the schedule, about this time last month, I've been counting down the minutes until the series aired. After spending yesterday making notes in front of the telly, upon her return from work, I asked my wife if she fancied watching it, too. When? She wanted to know. I dunno. I was thinking, like, tonight, with me. I'm more than happy to watch it again. Bizarrely, this offer was given rather short shrift. Rather than face the terrifying prospect that indifference, not hate, is the opposite of love, I prefer to attribute my enthusiasm for this day-glow nightmare to a fondness for rock and roll war stories. Never mind my familiarity with the name of every band mentioned in the series, no matter how obscure, Bang Tango, anyone, it was the scent of insanity that piqued my interest. God knows, there's more than enough to go around. The pursuit of hedonistic happiness, it seems, drove everyone in the scene crazy. While a full itemization of unvarnished stories from the hair metal heyday would require Nothin' But a Good Time to remain on the air for longer than The Simpsons, the show does its best to appraise the wreckage. Roll up to hear about the time when great white singer Jack Russell was discovered hiding a stash of hard drugs beneath his wig, the night when Bret Michaels and C.C. DeVille, from Poison, had a fistfight in front of Cindy Crawford and Arsenio Hall backstage at the MTV Awards, and the North American tour by Ozzy Osbourne and Motley Crue during which people defecated in shoes awaiting valeting in the corridors of upscale hotels. To be fair, recalling their crazy days and nights at fleshpots such as the Rainbow Bar and Grill, on Sunset Boulevard, Talking Heads' Warren DeMartini, from Rat, and Le Guns guitarist, and Guns N' Roses co-founder, Tracy Guns seem like smart people. Other contributors seem like bright sparks, too, or at least, they do now. It's only as part of a wider cohort in search of success, substances and sex on the streets of Los Angeles, in the 1980s, that the whole lot of them were as dumb as dirt. Even today, I struggle to believe just how popular some of this stuff became. In the United States, Rat and Poison went multi-platinum 5 times between them. Le Guns and Tough, whose career seemed to last about 3 weeks, went gold. Quiet Riot's Metal Health was the first hard rock LP to top the American chart. Appetite for Destruction, meanwhile, by Guns N' Roses, has to date sold more than 30 million copies. In my respectful opinion, GNR, who promptly decoupled from the scene, anyway, were the only good band of this number. With their appetite for drugs and sex, naturally, it was early-day pioneers Motley Crue who set the tone. This is what's going to kill new wave acts such as A Flock of Seagulls, Enthused and Armand Tom's a tout to the managing director of Elektra Records. Shortly after signing to the record label, singer Vince Neil repaid the endorsement by sleeping with Zatout's girlfriend. I use the verb in only a figurative sense. The liaison actually took place in a backstage porter cabin following a performance in front of 250,000 people at the US Festival, in San Bernardino, in 1983. Very quickly, licentiousness became a defining characteristic. The amount of sex that was going on in my life was insane, reports Tracy Guns, on camera. I could be at the Whiskey A Go-Go Club, walk upstairs, and there'd be a girl or two, to whom I could say, "Are you going to the bathroom?" "Yeah." "Can I go with you?" "Yeah." That was normal, and that leads to such a skewed point of view.